What is the classic, the epitome, the one episode that you think defines the best of Star Trek? The one thing you can say that, yes, that is indeed a Star Trek. Well, here in the Court of Q, we will judge two of our contestants to provide the answers where none others can. What will be here in this court the definitive episode? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Prose and Khan's special charity edition. I would like to introduce you to our two guests. And, well, you've already met them. Here they are. That is Frank and Big. Welcome to the chat. And you've got too many points. Let's get rid of those.
No. This is a charity stream. So we need the charity, all the charity you can provide.
Especially today, please.
If you've not seen our Pros and Cons show before, this is a debate show set over 4 rounds. The first round will be opening statements, where you will deliver a statement declaring your intent. Second round will be evidence gathering. You will provide 2 pieces of evidence to support your claim. Third round will be cross-examination, asking each other questions to prove your intent. And finally, a closing statement. I'm already seeing lots of options from the chat. So I believe it is time. I think, Frank, you need to start with your opening statement. We used to have a hesitation, deviation, repetition rule. I have struck that from this week for expediency more than anything. But should you deliver a concise statement to my pleasing, me being the overriding judge of all things, then please go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Your Honor. And may I say, you are looking absolutely Q today.
That is the point.
Ladies, gentlemen, and other gendered species watching us from around the universe today, thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion, raising money for charity, celebrating each other, celebrating Star Trek as we all know and love, and coming together to ask the question, what episode truly embodies the message, the vision, the mantra, the core of Star Trek? And I intend today to bring you just that in a wild, amazing spew of non-tangible, incoherent sentences that absolutely have nothing to do with anything else, and no episodes will tie together. I'll probably name 8 episodes, but that's the point and the heart of it, because Star Trek is not defined by one thing. It's not defined by one moment. It's not defined by one captain, Picard. And it's not defined by one episode. No, it's defined by a universe of things. And I intend to bring that message to you and have you, Your Honor, and esteemed guest of the court, walk out going, he's probably right.
Do you actually have an episode that you were going to submit?
I have 8 prepared.
8 episodes. So when I said the definitive episode of Star Trek, you prepared 8.
Because I'm going to let my esteemed guest go first, and whatever he picks, I am prepared to then knock off my list, because I'm sure we have the same list.
I'm going to take that point back. Big, please submit your entry and your opening statement.
I can almost guarantee you that we don't. Because in order to answer the question, what is the quintessential Star Trek episode? One must first answer the question, what is Star Trek about? What is the theme? And to me, at its core, Star Trek seeks to answer, what does it mean to be human? What makes a person? And perhaps Trek's most fruitful ongoing narrative is to have non-human or partially human characters explore and pursue the human experience. Most notably Spock in TOS and subsequent films, and Data in TNG, and then other characters later on. But those, I think, are the 2 classic tentpole humanity exploration avatars, if you will. So it uses those characters as a mirror so that we can see what makes the human experience unique through their eyes, through stranger eyes, I suppose. But the most underrated and yet poignant exploration of this idea came not from someone viewing humanity as an aspiration, but instead receiving it as a punishment. I'm speaking of the episode Deja Q, where one of the greatest antagonists in Trek history is stripped of his omnipotence and throws himself on the mercy of the Enterprise crew, largely to save and protect his now very mortal skin from the myriad of enemies he's made over centuries of mischief. But over the course of the episode, Q not only learns that even as a mere human he can still contribute to his inherited family, but that he can discover and use the best aspects of humanity, selflessness, humility, and personal sacrifice to ultimately save the day. As the best Trek episodes do, Deja Q allows us to see ourselves for the noble creatures we can be at our best, and that even ostensibly the worst of us can rise to the occasion and become more than what we were before.
Well, I'm going to award you a point for picking a Q episode. Always pleases the court. It definitely does. And I'm also going to give you a point for doing what your opposition didn't and actually picking a singular episode. So 2 points straight away.
Now, hold on, Your Honor. Now, hold on. My opening arguments are setting forth what I intend to do. I am not laying out the actual episode and everything first. This is poker. I'm not showing you all my cards yet. I don't
The
want him to
sunglasses
have,
didn't go unnoticed by me.
I don't want him to have an upper hand. In my next statements, giving the evidence, then I'll give the episode or episodes, whatever I so choose. You know.
I hear your argument, in which case we shall move towards the evidence gathering. Well, there we go. All stand, please. Please, Big, present your first piece of evidence.
Okay. So, if we are defining quintessential Star Trek, definitive Star Trek, we cannot explore that idea without acknowledging the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry. It is his vision that created the entire universe of Star Trek. And very famously, Rick Berman had a bust of Gene Roddenberry on his desk. And when writers would, when they would explore ideas that Gene Roddenberry didn't like, they would put a blindfold on the bust of Gene Roddenberry because they don't want to blind the great bird to these ideas. But because the writers could kind of see that as a straitjacket narratively, because he was very famously against conflict between human characters and things like that. But all that said, this Deja Q contains the last and maybe the last great contribution of Gene Roddenberry himself to the Trek universe. And I'd like to read something from Michael Piller regarding this episode. And I quote, "One of the great lessons that I learned about Roddenberry's vision came 3 or 4 weeks after I got on the staff. It was about a Q show called Suddenly Human, eventually Deja Q. The story was about Q coming on board the Enterprise and pretending he had lost his powers and taking the Enterprise on a wild goose chase around the universe. We went into Gene, we pitched Gene, I said, it's a wild goose chase around the universe and it all turns out to be a Q joke on the crew. And Gene says, very simply, well, yeah, but what's it about? And I said, well, it's a wild goose chase, Gene. But what's it about? If you want to really tell a story about a god who must find what it's like to be mortal, then tell that story. But all you're telling me now, he said, is just stuff. It has no theme. So in rededicating it to his original idea and primary focus on exploring humanity, this was the last great gift that Gene Roddenberry gave to writers and gave to Star Trek and gave to the fans of the show. So it is you can't have Star Trek without Gene Roddenberry. And this was the last great thing that he did for Star Trek. So that makes it quintessential to me.
Fantastic. Frank, retort on that point.
What's a fine point?
Oh, good.
And
I'll
I
give him a
appreciate
point
your
then, shall I?
point because, you're crooked and I hope you get thrown in jail. it's a fine point because I agree with a lot of it, and I'm going to steal some of those bits later because I have a lot of the same thoughts that Gene Roddenberry did have the vision, and we're going to base my argument on the vision. So I'm not going to contend with you there, but I am going to contend with the last great thing he did because he lived for quite a while, just a little bit longer beyond those late 80s moments, but he contributed a lot more before that were positive. The fact that he even let the Next Generation on the air is contribution enough. Not even, saying a singular episode, but he allowed Trek to continue, I think is far better than a single episode. But I'll concede with you that, yes, Gene Roddenberry has to be there for the rest of this to exist. Now, where you did not take into account of what the mission and the vision and the mantra of Star Trek is, which is what Gene Roddenberry laid out. Humanity, yes. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean for this human experience to grow beyond what we have now, what we will have in the future, and what we could have if we applied ourselves and reached out to the stars? And there's a great more than just ice cream and I'm hungry and it's cold and I'm tired, which were the things that Q went through. There's way more than that.
I would say they're both good points either round. So I will give, this is an equitable court, I will give you both points. Okay. Your first piece of evidence, please, Frank.
Thank you, Your Honor, Crooked. So, I believe that
Silence! Sorry.
I agree with my esteemed opponent that Gene Roddenberry did bring forth that vision. As I just said, a great many more things than just the little microcosm of humanity. It's what we can be if we don't have the barriers of race, religion, politics, money, illness, and disease. Any of those factors in our way, we are limitless. And what is the world like? What is the universe like when we are limitless? What stops us? And that's why I believe the best message of Star Trek and the best and one of the final messages of Roddenberry, if you want to play that game, brother. Yeah. The final messages of Roddenberry is my favorite episode of Star Trek. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, directed by Leonard Nimoy. It's a 2-part episode, long form, that unfortunately made it to TV after it made it into motion picture theaters, where they have these things on screen called talkies. And it was eventually on TV. And that show absolutely exhibits everything about Star Trek. That show shows us a man, Kirk, and his crew that we've followed around for years that have lost a part of them. They've lost, their own family member in Spock, and they refuse to take that sitting down. They want to at least give him a proper burial. They want to at least get his body. And then, of course, things unfurl, and we get into this grand adventure into which we get Spock back, and we get to question, what is it like to be human? Because Spock loses that humanity, and he has to relearn it in the second best episode of Star Trek ever, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, the second part of this 2-part episode. And you get to watch this journey of someone who was human, loses his humanity, and regains it while watching the journey of humans around them gaining more humanity through this experience, and loss at the same time. Kirk finds an enormous loss in his son he didn't know he had until 12 minutes earlier, that he never got to play baseball with, never got to give the father-son sit-down talk about, the birds and the bees or whatever was going to happen before he was struck down so bravely by a Klingon from behind the back, because that's how Klingons do it. Kirk felt enormous pain, but that wasn't going to stop him. He was going to make sure that life and humanity continued on, and we could all benefit from one, because the needs of the one do outweigh the needs of the many.
So you've narrowed it down from all of Star Trek to a few films, so that's progress. I'll allow Big to counter retort here.
I sort of zoned out where you said that your favorite episode of Star Trek, favorite 2 episodes of Star Trek, are movies that aren't actually episodes of a television program.
They are long form episodes.
Settle down. Settle down.
So I think just on the face of the argument, the fact that you didn't pick episodes of a television show for your favorite episodes of a television show, do I need to counter any of the other points that you made?
That's a very good point, and I like the interaction there. I'm going to give Big a point for that one of calling you on the title of this particular episode of Pros and Cons. Is what is the definitive episode of Star Trek? So, Big, it's your turn now for evidence, part 2, please.
Objection, Your Honor.
Please.
Define episode.
An episode that has aired on a television during a season run of one of the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 current running series.
This honorable court is adjourned.
Big, your piece of evidence, please.
Okay. So my second piece of evidence is a little bit more about the broader influence of Star Trek on the culture. And what truer measure of an episode's influence on the public consciousness can there be than the aspects of it that have grown beyond the episode itself? Sure, anybody can say live long and prosper, or ask to be beamed up, and expect the message to be understood. But what about the ideas that extend past the bounds of Trek fandom and Trek context and take on a life of their own? I'm talking, of course, of memes. And Déjà Q has some of the most well-known and well-loved to have ever come from Star Trek. I'll start small and local to us. Of course, mariachi music that is used to celebrate all kinds of things. Yes, I'm expecting it very soon. That is something that it transcends. Like, you might not even necessarily know that it comes from Déjà Q, but it has taken on a life of its own, and yes, there it is. Yes.
The court will adjourn for the music.
So yeah, it has become more than Q celebrating getting his powers back. It has taken on celebration of any kind and jubilation at anything. But so that's not the best one. Second, we have what has the Data laugh from Q giving gifts to members of the crew, and the one that really stuck and has taken on a life of its own is the laugh, the unreserved, unguarded, uncontrollable laughter of Data in that one moment. But I saved the best for last, and that is something that has kind of become a term unto itself. And that is the Jean-Luc Picard. Yes. Yeah. Great. Wonderful. And that is the Jean-Luc Picard facepalm, which also comes from Déjà Q. Yes. And it is the quintessential example of the facepalm, and that has taken the world over from memes. So,
Frank, your retort.
So that is beautiful, and that is brilliant. And I appreciate the fact that you've gone outside of the box. Instead of talking about the normal tenets of what makes up a good person and the morality that we try and eschew from these 42-minute episodes, or in my case, hour and 40 minutes. It was just a long episode. You don't know. You don't know that it didn't air in some countries on TV. Maybe you do because you're a Q. But I'm saying in the Maldives, where we air and we have viewers, shout out to you Maldivians, that, it aired on TV. Anyway, you want to talk about memes, brother? How about the memes from Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4? And I don't just mean double dumbass on you. One of the greatest memes of all time, when Kirk ran afoul of R.A. Rondrove in Capital 227 cab.
Double dumbass on you.
He deserved to get hit. And the fact that RA didn't run him down is just a testament to how great a man RA is. And hopefully one day he will be immortalized in Star Trek timelines.
LDS.
I'm on LDS right now. Beyond that meme, Scotty. Hello, computer. One of the most famous of all time.
Hello, computer.
And look at that. See, he's even the cosmos knows we have the greatest memes from my 2-part long episode because they're even immortalized in sound bites here, just like yours. Not taking away that point, but the greatest sound bite of all, the greatest moment of all, the greatest meme of all from my 2 parts.
I think that has to be your most coherent answer. The coherent answer yet. Settle down, settle down, settle down. I'm going to
even get
reward
to
you
finish his answer.
both a point on that occasion, since you both have most entries on that occasion. But Frank, please
say the meme you're wanting to say.
You have more. You have more. Sorry.
Memus interruptus.
Thank you. You
Sorry.
know what? I for once, my brother in arms here figures out that the judge is crooked. He's trying to steamroll me. I guess I was going to say you were in his pocket already. I'm just going to sit here and drink my Cleveland Clapper.
No, please present your final meme.
The best meme of all was from Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. David is dead. And right before that year, this is the greatest.
That was just that. Okay, anyway, find a point each for your awesome meme work there. Frank, final piece of evidence, please.
We touched earlier on how Kirk had lost a son, but he had regained a best friend. But what we need to also explore is the ability of many people across different backgrounds to band together for one common goal and for the good of all. When they all violate so many laws, it's not even funny. They're all criminals. And they hijack a ship that has no business even flying, even though a bunch of monkeys could do it, apparently, which doesn't feel too well. And spoiler alert, a few minutes when they blow the whole damn thing up. Different argument altogether. I am for it, by the way. I'm for this episode, not against it. But the fact that you get all these people willing to risk their lives and their careers and the well-being of future generations from them that will inherit nothing because they'll be criminals locked up forever to go find a dead body on a planet and bring it back. That is the power of friendship. That is the power of camaraderie. That is the power of a bigger mission than just themselves that they had all been embodied, and they try and embody to us is there's more out there than just you, and give to the rest of the world, and maybe you'll get something good in return. Just like you right now can go to the donation link pinned right here in chat and give to our charity stream for the International Rescue Foundation.
That's a point. Yeah, no, I'll give you a point for that.
Look at him try.
Wow, someone used that meme not for me. That's weird. Okay, Big, your retort, please.
It's still not from an episode. I mean, I don't want to keep hammering the same drum, but it doesn't matter how good your points are if they're not applying to something that's the actual subject of the argument.
Do you want me to start over and pick an episode? Because I've got 8.
Too late for that now. Big, you raise a very good point. That is a point for the good point. Okay, cross-examination. You are allowed to answer, and due levity of time, I will give you each one question to ask your opposite number. Frank, please, cross-examination, please ask your first question to Big.
Big, how you doing?
Great. Okay. So
okay, fantastic. Good. Right. Big's question. Yeah. No. Well, this is an equitable court. I see what you were doing there. Very well done.
So, if I'm reading you right, if I'm getting your point right, Q, the greatest scoundrel the universe has ever known, who appeared just a few years earlier and turned these people's lives upside down, thrust them across the galaxy, brought the Borg to them, just the worst anything, anywhere, ever. Now suddenly he's like defrocked and he's human. and we're like cheering along, yay, to the whole staff because they take pity on him and they don't immediately go, oh wow, you're human, transport him outside. Like, you know, he, at what point do they lock him up and go, okay, well now you're human, you're going to face charges for the crimes that you've committed, off to the brig with you, and then immediately off to a starbase where you're locked away forever, throw away the key, bury the starbase, blow up the starbase, I don't care.
Well, for one thing, they do lock him up. He is in the brig for a significant portion of the episode. But
I've never seen it.
Oh. So, I think another aspect of the human experience and the human condition is faith in the idea of redemption. And that even the worst of us can be given a chance to redeem ourselves and to be better than we were before. And I think it's a testament to the crew that they give Q that opportunity. And that even when it looks like that faith is very much misplaced. And in the end, it is rewarded. And I think that is what we have to do. I mean, that is what is...
Is it rewarded? Is it rewarded?
It is.
Because he brings the mariachi band. He gives Riker 2 women who he, you know, he's like, I don't need your women. Bullshit. He had those women sent to his quarters. He gave Worf the women. Worf was like, hey, thanks. Everybody got a cigar. Like, what kind of reward is that really for the scourge of the galaxy that's going to come back and do worse crap 30 days later? Like, you don't think that they're flying along and then Q appears and John looks like, oh God, why did I not shoot this guy?
Since my esteemed opponent has not come prepared by knowing this episode, I will be his memory alpha for him. And Q goes out on a shuttlecraft and sacrifices himself in order to save the rest of the ship.
That's a conspiracy theory because Q2 shows up and allegedly, if I've heard, I don't know, never watched it, but it's a Q conspiracy. It's a Q-spiracy. Your Honor.
I will give Big the point there for strongly defending his argument that, in fact, there was a good...
I can't stop the heterocyclic declination.
We need a biomolecular physiologist in here. This man is dying.
He is indeed. But no, well, you know, if we're going to play to the court's rules, and this is an equitable court, as I do keep reminding you, okay, we are going to move swiftly on to closing arguments. I'm going to start with our very respectful of the judge's attention, Mr. Big McLarchie. Please start with your closing argument.
Okay. So, in the end, it's not the memes or even the contributions of the great bird of the galaxy himself that makes Deja Q the quintessential piece of Trek. It's the way that Q himself solves the central conflict of the episode and learns for himself what it means to be a human. Q learns the importance of compassion and self-sacrifice, venturing off into the darkness alone so that the Enterprise might have a chance at survival. His willingness to give up his own life serves as an act of selflessness that redeems him in the eyes of the Q continuum. With his powers back, and despite insisting that he hasn't learned a lesson, Q saves the day, and the Enterprise continues on its way. It's the most optimistic ending possible under the circumstances, and a beautiful expression of the optimism that many people have come to expect from Star Trek. It suggests that if you put people in the right conditions, they're capable of truly wondrous things. For all the power that he held and all the knowledge that he retained, Q only truly became the person that he could be when he was exiled to the Enterprise. Now, none of this is to suggest that Deja Q is in fact the greatest episode of Star Trek, or even the greatest episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, or even Star Trek The Next Generation Season 3. But what I am saying, that Deja Q understands better than almost any other episode what the central theme of Star Trek is, and that is the exploration of humanity. Thank you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Frank, your closing argument. Please.
You got an annotated bibliography for the website you stole that article from you just read?
Oh, settle down, settle down, settle down.
Yeah, if I'm going down, I've got nothing but contempt for this court, buddy. So, you have absolutely laid out a masterful argument, and you have spent longer than 5 minutes working on this. I concede that to you, as someone who spent 3 minutes working on it. I absolutely do agree that your 2 minutes extra of preparation has, in fact, laid out the groundwork for an excellent argument that does extol the virtues of Star Trek, humanity, and what we can all aspire to be. However, Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4 together as a 2-part episode, as they have aired on television somewhere, maybe in my own house, I don't know, are better than the other option that I had that I was going to use, which is Strange New Worlds, unrelated 2 parts, Memento Mori, and Those Who Wander, which show us the true ability of humanity, of loss, of understanding, grief, growth, and acceptance. And you learn to be a better human. You learn to be a better person, a better starship captain or crew member, what have you, and how to deal with situations that sometimes you cannot win, but sometimes you just have to accept. And an acceptance of humanity, acceptance of our lesser being, we grow higher.
That's all she wrote? Fantastic.
Well,
that is all she wrote, yes. No, very, very eloquent argument presented. I will give you a point there for your closing argument. However, I believe you still haven't come to the conclusion of which is the definitive singular episode of Star Trek. So with
hold on.
that,
Let me look at my list.
With that in mind, I am prepared to award with a staggering 16 points for picking the most eloquent Star Trek episode featuring one of the best characters ever in a Star Trek production. And, you know, well, there's nothing better than a Q episode, is there? Really is nothing comparable. I award Big McLarge the victory over this particular point. Yes?
It's Far Beyond the Stars. Far Beyond the Stars is the best episode of Star Trek. And the reason being...
No, anyway, that's been a wonderful episode of Pros and Cons. We will be back with another one some other time. Congratulations. Hang on. Sorry, no, we need to... bye-bye, Frank. Bye-bye, Frank. Anyway, we will congratulate our winner, and we will be back another time. Thank you very much for joining us. And there's all she wrote. I don't know why I've said that 3 times.